How does a person go from being a shy high school student into the Secretary General of a conference that organizes over 2,000 individuals? In honor of MCMUN this week, I sat down with my friend Marta Canneri, the 27th Secretary General of MCMUN, to cover her Model UN journey, discuss conference organizing advice, and ask the question if she would rather refer to Canada as the Republic of America's hat or never use public transit again. Marta shares her story and more on this episode. Please note that we have edited down the audio from the original content. Hello and welcome. I am your host Aaron, and this is episode 3 of munCast.
I want to start things off with a very simple question. Where and when did you start Model UN?
Wow, bringing me back, Aaron.
Yes, that's right.
So I started doing Model United Nations in 10th grade at my high school in Toronto, Canada. I moved to Toronto when I was very young. First, I moved to Brooklyn from Italy and then to Toronto from Brooklyn. So I'd moved around a lot, and I also didn't really speak English as well as I wanted to. I mean, by that point I did, but when I first moved there, I was very much speaking English as a second language. And so because of that, I kind of grew up as a very shy and introverted and quiet person, much to the surprise of most people that know me now.
It's definitely a surprise to me, yeah.
So in 10th grade, I think I kind of, a friend probably convinced me to try this Model United Nations thing, which I had absolutely no idea what it was. And they kind of threw me into my first ever committee, which was the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and I was Somalia. And I remember just kind of being completely silent for the first day. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of the day thinking, wait, I kind of want to win this thing, because in addition to being extremely shy and introverted, I was also extremely competitive. So I went home and I kind of wrote down my opening speech for the next day multiple times, got up in front of everyone, read it directly off of my piece of paper, and then kind of felt this exhilarating rush. And I just kept speaking, and Model UN kind of became my thing. I loved it so much. I realized that it gave me the confidence to speak, to assume a different character or a different role, and be confident and be kind of the confident delegate with good public speaking skills, which was not something I ever imagined that I could ever be. So that's kind of the start of it. I ended up doing it a lot for the rest of high school, and then it kind of even conditioned where I decided to go to university. McGill has the best Model United Nations team in Canada, and it also travels a lot to the East Coast. All of our conferences that we travel to are the traditional East Coast conferences, so NICSIC, UpMunk, Harvard, Chomun. And so I came to McGill in part because of my passion for Model UN. And then at McGill, I joined the travel team. I started staffing MCMUN and our high school conference Suns. And I just kind of continued to make it sort of a huge part of my life, which is why I am freaking out that I'm about to graduate. And Model UN will no longer sort of be a defining feature.
But I want to talk about your journey once you got to McGill, and so how you got to the position of Secretary General of one of the largest Model UN conferences in the world. So can we start back with how you ended up joining McGill Model United Nations, and how you became the Secretary General of MCMUN?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, I came to McGill because I knew that McGill had an amazing Model United Nations team. But what I didn't realize until I got to McGill was how kind of diffuse the Model United Nations culture is at McGill. And from my conversations with a lot of people on the circuit, this seems to be one of the kind of unique aspects of McGill. So for example, for MCMUN, we get hundreds of applications to staff, like almost 1,000 applications to staff the conference. Wow. And I was incredibly lucky to be in that environment, because it really kind of allowed my passion for Model UN to grow. Now, for how I became Secretary General, I don't know how it is at other schools, but at McGill, the one kind of downside of Model UN being so popular is that it's incredibly competitive, and moreover, it's quite cliquey. So the kind of older delegates and the older conference organizers are very much an exclusive group of friends. And in first year, I was so excited about Model UN, I kind of dove rather deep into it. So I competed on the college team, and I staffed both our high school and our collegiate conference. And I kind of felt left out by everyone. I kind of felt like they weren't really including the first years. So my second year of college, I decided that I would take a break from Model UN and focus on some other things. And I realized halfway through second year that I just couldn't do that. I loved Model UN too much. So I applied to be on the Secretariat of McMun. I was chosen to be the chargé d'affaires. So that's the member of the Secretariat that deals with things like registration and the delegates, and kind of all the delegates facing aspects of the conference. And I absolutely loved that. I loved having more of an organizational role in a Model UN conference. It opened up a completely new aspect of Model UN to me. And it kind of made me realize that all these opinions I had about Model UN, and I had a lot of opinions about Model UN conferences and what they should be doing and what they could be doing better. And I realized that I might actually have the chance to kind of implement some of these opinions, or at least have my say, at least try to influence how Model UN conferences are run, which is why I decided to go for a Secretary General of McMun. And when I was elected, I never thought from first year, oh, I'm going to be Secretary General of McMun someday. Mm-hmm. But I think, and even now, it doesn't even feel like I've reached kind of the pinnacle, but it's still, I think, going back to what I was saying, it's still incredibly rewarding to feel like now I can have a say in the organization of something that I've loved for so long and that has given back so much to me.
Yeah, so you've been involved with Model UN since your sophomore year of high school, you said, and now you're a senior in university. And so you've done a lot of Model United Nations, and you're also now, again, I want to stress this, in the position Secretary General of one of the largest conferences in the world. Can you attribute your ability to get to this position to any sort of experiences in the past, whether it was staffing or competing as a delegate or anything else that helped you become Secretary General?
That's a great question. Well, one of the things that has helped me the most as Secretary General is definitely how to work with people, both kind of how to lead them and how to follow them, how to listen to them, how to be diplomatic with them, and how to inspire trust. And if I were to kind of attribute that, I wouldn't be able to attribute it to one thing, but I think kind of working with Best Delegate has been huge for me in terms of kind of my Model UN trajectory. So I started off with Best Delegate working as a media associate in my first year of university. And then I worked as a diplomacy fellow 2 summers in a row. And working as a diplomacy fellow, both meeting other people on the circuit, which was incredibly exciting to me, and working with high school students, high school delegates, and teaching them Model UN kind of renewed my appreciation for Model UN and what it can do on one hand, which I think is hugely important in terms of my internal drive, and two, really taught me how to work with people, both in the context of Model United Nations and in the greater context of kind of a job and kind of a real world responsibility. So I think Best Delegate both really helped me in terms of working with people and also really renewed my passion for what Model United Nations is and what Model United Nations can do. So that was definitely huge. I think also competing on the collegiate circuit in general I mean, a lot has been said about the collegiate circuit, and a lot of it I agree with, that it is incredibly competitive and that it can be really detrimental to the spirit of Model UN at times. But meeting all these other like-minded people who enjoy spending their weekends wearing Western business attire in hotels, talking about real world and fantasy problems, was amazing. Knowing that there are thousands of other people like me who love this and love doing it and love meeting other people who like it was incredibly inspiring and also really just fun.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Because one of the reasons I say that is because I wouldn't know you if it weren't for Best Delegate, because actually 3 summers ago at this point was when we met at the University of Florida, where we both staffed that Best Delegate program. And then the next summer, we ended up traveling around the United States teaching Model UN again. And so, yeah, I think it's very interesting, both in terms of Best Delegate being able to show you all these amazing people, but also knowing these people from around the world and around the Model UN circuit, just being friends with them, because we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, more than likely, if it wasn't for Model United Nations. So I think it does a really good job of connecting people to each other.
Oh yeah, and I mean, as a sort of Canadian college student, I never would have expected that now I would have friends all over the place. I mean, like, you're in Korea and we met at the University of Florida, and I know people from the west coast of California and from all over the east coast and from Europe, all through Model UN. Like, that's amazing.
That always blows my mind, just the people that you meet and where they're from, and also where they're going. But one thing I want to ask you, to narrow back into Model UN and your experience, you've pretty much, from what it sounds like, done almost every aspect of Model UN, from competing as a delegate to staffing conferences and teaching Model UN as a job, and then now also you're the Secretary General of MCMUN. If I had to ask you, what is your favorite aspect of Model United Nations today, what would you say it is?
Oh man. Well, first of all, it's definitely changed over the years. Definitely. I've gone through kind of phases of what I prefer, but on the whole, if I had to choose one thing, it would probably have to be teaching high school students about Model UN, because kind of like I alluded to earlier, that's where you really see Model UN doing what it was supposed to do, teaching students both about real world affairs and about international affairs and the world around them and global literacy, and skills like public speaking and negotiation and research. And it was incredibly rewarding to see these high school students, some of which were incredibly shy going into the program, interfacing with Model UN and interacting with Model UN and getting so much out of it. And I think in a lot of respects, the college circuit is amazing, but in a lot of respects, it's kind of lost some of that. It's kind of lost the more, I guess, pure aspects of Model UN. And I mean, that's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but teaching high school students really reminded me of why I got into Model UN in the first place. And it was so great because it kind of allowed me to come full circle, to kind of see myself in that kind of 16-year-old girl who was incredibly shy, and then after 3 days could make a speech in front of the entire committee. And I think in terms of just pure reward, probably teaching high school students was most beneficial.
Yeah, and now you're not just teaching Model UN, you're also going to be leading a conference and helping to educate, as well as get people to participate in Model UN. And there's going to be over 2,000 people at MCMUN. That must be pretty crazy to try and wrap your head around that number. 2,000 people participating in your conference. How does that feel?
It's weird, Aaron, because I mean, yesterday was our staff hype night. We have a hype night on the Friday before the conference to get everyone excited. Everyone comes out to a venue, and all these people were approaching me, and it was incredibly crowded, and all these people were approaching me and saying, like, Marta, aren't you so excited? Like, this is all yours. And I thought about it, and it doesn't feel all mine. And it's really not all mine, because so much of it is my team, is this amazing team of 12 secretariat members that have put so much. So while I can kind of think about it that way and think about it as sort of my conference, it doesn't feel that way. It feels very much like something that I am taking part in and have kind of helped create, but I've helped create it with the help of 12 people and then 500 staffers and then 1,500 delegates. It feels very much like a joint endeavor.
I really like that you highlighted the importance of your team and what they've contributed, because I don't know if everyone always recognizes how much work, not just the Secretary General, but everyone on Secretariat and everyone on staff goes through just to host a conference. And it wouldn't be possible without everyone who hosts it, and especially for the size of MCMUN. It's amazing to think that you and the rest of your team is coordinating not just 500 other staffers to do a job and to run a conference, but also coordinating it with 1,500 other people.
This is the end of part 1. To listen to part 2, please click the link or annotation.